If war started tomorrow, would Europe be ready? Not politically, not economically, but militarily. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Europe looks powerful on paper, but war doesn't care about paper. It cares about speed, coordination, and decisions made in minutes. And that's exactly where things get complicated. The European Union is one of the richest and most advanced regions in the world. But it's not a country. It's a group of countries with different priorities, different governments, and sometimes completely different interests. So the real question isn't just, is Europe strong? The real question is, what happens when something goes wrong fast? Let's start with what makes Europe look strong. Economically, it's massive. The EU has one of the largest combined economies on Earth. It controls trade, sets global regulations, and influences how companies operate worldwide. On the surface, that looks like power. But economic power doesn't automatically translate into military power, because war isn't about GDP. It's about readiness, and readiness means something very specific. How fast can you respond? How quickly can you move troops? How clearly can you make decisions without arguing for weeks? And this is where Europe becomes complicated, because the EU is not a single command. It's 27 different countries trying to act like one system. And in a crisis, that difference matters a lot more than people think. Here's something most people don't realize. The European Union does not have its own army. There is no single force, no unified command, no central military authority controlling everything. Instead, each country has its own army. France, Germany, Italy, Poland, all separate, all with their own priorities, their own budgets, their own strategies. Now, yes, they cooperate. They train together. They coordinate. But cooperation is not the same as unity. And in a real emergency, that difference becomes critical, because decisions need to be instant, not negotiated. And Europe, by design, is built on negotiation, not speed. So if the EU doesn't have a single army, who actually defends Europe? The answer is NATO. NATO is the real military backbone of Europe. It's the system that connects multiple countries under one defense agreement. And at the center of NATO, there's one country that matters more than any other: the United States. Because when it comes to military power, technology, logistics, global reach, the US carries a huge part of the load, which leads to a serious question. What happens if that support weakens, or slows down, or becomes uncertain? Because without that backbone, Europe would have to rely much more on itself. And right now, that transition is not fully complete. Now imagine a real scenario. Something sudden, something fast, a conflict, a cyber attack, a military escalation. What happens first? Individual countries respond, not the EU as a whole. Each nation acts based on its own interests, its own leadership, its own perception of the threat. Then coordination begins. Meetings, discussions, agreements. But here's the problem. Crisis moves faster than bureaucracy. And the EU is built on process, which works well in peace, but creates friction in urgency. That doesn't mean Europe is weak. It means Europe is slow to unify. And in modern conflict, speed is everything. So does that mean the EU could collapse? Not easily. The system is designed to hold together, even under pressure. Because leaving the EU is complicated, expensive, and politically messy. We've already seen that with Brexit. But stress still exists. economic differences between countries, disagreements over policy, different visions of the future. All of this creates tension, not collapse, but friction. And over time, friction can slow decision-making even more. Which brings us back to the real issue. Not whether Europe is strong, but whether it can act fast when it needs to. Here's the reality most people miss. Europe is not weak. It's just built differently. It's not a single power. It's a system, a network of countries trying to act together. That gives it stability, but also complexity. And complexity is not always your friend in a crisis. So if something happens tomorrow, Europe won't collapse overnight. But it won't react like a single nation either. It will coordinate. It will respond. But it will take time. And in modern conflict, time is the one thing you don't always have. So the real question isn't just, is Europe ready for war? The real question is, can Europe act fast enough when it matters most? Because strength is one thing, but speed is something else entirely. Because systems don't fail when they're weak, they fail when they're too slow. The world doesn't break all at once. It shifts quietly until one moment changes everything. This is Headline Circus. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.